Welcome back, traveler, to this new edition of the Bondcast. I'm your host, Dayon, and today we're going to be talking about the Lightforged Draenei. Now, this is our third attempt at doing a video of the Lightforged Draenei, and I already feel pretty guilty for asking everybody to kind of gather around so many times for a video that didn't work out, so we're going to make sure this is something we knock out of the park. So, today I'm joined by a cast of characters who I'm very happy to have join me again for this third attempt. And we've brought our special guest, Kai's Daryl, on to talk about the Lightforged Draenei. Kai's Daryl, how are you doing today?
Good, I'm alright.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you again for our third outing on this. This has been fantastic, and you've been a huge sport, by the way. I can't really thank you guys enough, and I can't really thank the Chateau enough for recommending you and turning you on to our podcast. I'm joined by one of our mainstay panelists today, Qualia. How you doing, bud?
Pretty good.
Awesome, awesome. And we're also joined by one of our favorite class clowns, Esna. How you doing, buddy?
Full of cheesy biscuit butter.
I expect nothing less from you. We're also going to be joined by Goramash, who's currently away cooking, so I'm sure he'll come in like a wrecking ball, as he's wont to do, the giant orc juggernaut that he is.
Oh my god.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Yeah, oh my god. Keep going.
He's going to bust in here like the Kool-Aid man. Anywho. So we're going to talk about the Lightforged Draenei, but we're not going to just talk about the Lightforged Draenei. We're going to talk about how our guest Kai's Daryl got involved with the Draenei. We've asked him to be on the podcast because he's been playing as a Draenei and among Draenei in a guild focused on Draenei for nigh on almost a decade now. So if there's anybody we want to have talk about the Lightforged and explain to us why they're so cool, I can't think of anyone better, and I've been happy to have him around. So Kazro, why don't we go ahead and get started by, how did you get started with World of Warcraft, and what expansion was active when you were playing, just that. Let's start with that. What got you into WoW?
Well, first I want to say that I've been playing for almost more than a decade, but the guild has only been around for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that was clear when I said this earlier.
I think I remember you said that in an earlier recording. But I figured, I didn't mean to imply that the Chateau were around for 10 years. I knew that you had been playing for some time, though. When did you get started?
Yeah. I got started in late Wrath. I want to say it was Child of the Crusader.
Same time.
But since, no one was doing that raid because everyone hated it, I distinctly remember going into Ulduar.
Right, everyone was a fan of Ulduar. I personally like Child of the Crusader. So, you got involved late Wrath. Did you ever play the Warcraft 3 game before World of Warcraft became an MMO?
No, I didn't. I heard of it, but honestly, RTS games aren't my style. I don't like micromanaging, and it's just that and StarCraft I could never get into. Even though I love the story aspect of it, I could never get into it until Warcraft became an MMO.
I'm the same way. I'm not good enough to play those games at a competitive level, but there is something about base building and micromanaging and deciding what warriors I want and when that I find pretty attractive, and I'm kind of looking forward to the Warfronts in Battle for Azeroth. But what's interesting is you didn't play Warcraft 3 at the time, and you started late in Wrath, so the whole controversy about the Draenei quote-unquote retcon kind of passed you by. So you didn't really have any of that context, and the Draenei, which surprised a lot of people when they were announced as a playable race because no one really saw it coming. I think they were the original Blood Elf Syndrome race. Maybe the Forsaken were. But, you weren't really... Your first exposure to the Draenei was not, this is not what I was expecting. What was your first?
I was blissfully unaware of what the controversy surrounding the Draenei when I joined. First, I decided to make a Draenei mage because I was looking. So when I first started playing, the Horde really fascinated me. I like their symbolism. I like what they stood for. I thought the monstrous races were interesting, but my friend said we play Alliance. You're gonna have to pick one of those.
I remember those.
And then so I looked at the Alliance races and I read about the Draenei, and they looked interesting to me. They look very unique. I have to say, you don't really find Draenei elsewhere in the fantasy genre.
The closest counterpart to them seems to be the Tiefling, but I think there's quite a bit that separates the two. There's an almost exotic and elf-like quality to the Draenei. I'm not sure exactly what it is that draws people in towards them. I think you had a good you had a good way to describe their quality before. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I like their. I guess you could say their holiness.
Okay.
I like that they were all about
Piety.
their faith. Yeah, their faith in the light, without being religious zealots or, when you come across religion in games, they kind of can go. They're kind of the stuffy, stuck-up elites.
Mm-hmm. Oh, without
And you
a
don't
doubt.
really get that. Yeah, and you don't really get that with the Draenei.
Mhm.
You kind of get like the chill hippies of WoW.
They're more they're humbled essentially, is I think is the term you're looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
It's an
They
entire
are-
society for them.
Yeah, they are religious based, but they're chill about it.
And for you, does your appreciation for the Draenei also come with an appreciation for the Naru, or do you kind of separate the two?
Definitely, I definitely see those two races intertwined. Although it's very important to distinguish that they are separate, both culturally and historically. But the Draenei story started with the Naru. Before, they were Eridar, and they only became Draenei after the intervention of the Naru. So I do find those closely linked, and I do like both of those races.
I think there's a lot to get into with the Draenei in particular. Now, you said you've been playing the Draenei you've been playing on the Alliance since your friends got you into it, and I'm sure you were drawn to the Draenei sometime very shortly after that. So, and I know that you're a role player like us. So I know that you're you sort of like lean towards more story-driven and community-driven gameplay styles. Gameplay is a very loose term. I'm not sure if I'd ever consider role-playing to be a type of actual gameplay, just another way to enjoy the world. But in what ways do you approach World of Warcraft, and in what ways does your appreciation and affinity for the Draenei impact what you do in the game, and how?
Well, I'm very well. At least I think so. Well-rounded in in my appreciation, my activity in WoW. I mostly raid and RP. During patch doldrums is when I achievement hunt and PvP.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot your second question.
You forgot what?
I forgot your second question.
Oh, how does your appreciation for the Draenei impact the way you play the game and the sort of communities that you choose to gravitate towards, and how?
Well, so the Draenei, it's interesting because the Draenei, first of all, has a very small, very close-knit community. And being a part of that community has been a blast, because we every community has their strong figures in it, but we just seem to have a great collection of artists and theory crafters and just generally creative people, and it kind of I'm sorry, hold on one second, my pizza's here.
No, you're fine. Take your time.
Pizza's important, man. If I may just butt in for a few seconds.
Go for it, dude.
When Kesdale comes back, I actually have known the Chateau for a decent amount of time since my time being here on the server.
Oh, no kidding.
And I've actually met them outside. Well, I'm usually on my Horde character whenever I see them. And I've actually, when he comes back, I actually have a funny story about how I met them on Argus.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
You met them with Esna on Argus?
Yeah, it was a weird kind of event, and I just sort of was there, and I showed up, and I guess I was kind of guard duty for a bit, keeping off mobs, keeping the mobs off of them, and I thought it was kind of funny. So now that I didn't know that, so
Esna's misadventures throughout Argus is a tale worth itself. Okay, apparently I've triggered some people with my comments that roleplay is not an actual form of gameplay. Allow me to explain. When I say roleplay is not gameplay, what I mean is there's no systems in World of Warcraft that really support it, in the sense that with PvE you can do dungeons and raids, with PvP you can do battlegrounds where you can fight out in the world. There's no reward system assigned to it, there's no progression.
There is a progression reward to the soul.
To the soul. It's a very community driven sort of way to play the game, but Blizzard's not going to reward you for it. The rewards you make are ultimately your own. So yeah,
exactly.
Role-playing has its roots in literally every game. It's called a role-playing game for a reason. And it's not just because you choose to play the role of a particular race in a particular class and it defines the way that you navigate and fight in the world. It's more than that. It's your character's personality. It's your character's values. So what I mean by role
It's not a
play.
gameplay option.
What I mean by it's not. The game doesn't reward you for role playing. You really have to reward yourself, and that when it's as liberating as it can be. It's both liberating and kind of. Ooh man, where am I trying to go with this?
Wild,
It's untrammeled, but it's also.
It's
unpredictable.
not supported as much as the other features. I got you.
Well, yeah, of course.
Pretty much.
Ironically enough, RP servers are probably the most populated servers now in WoW.
Which is funny, yeah.
Snort.
Right. But another funny thing that he's talking about people who theorycraft and are artists, right? When he comes back, we're gonna bring up Jedine.
Mm.
You guys know what Jedine is?
Yeah, the Draenei wrestling.
Yeah, boy.
It's
All right,
the
I'm
way-
back. Sorry about that.
Hey.
Oh, hey,
guys,
welcome back.
We're speculating a little bit about. Yeah, as you said, there are great artists and theory crafters, and you're not wrong about that. And if there's any greater testament to that than the fact that the community has created this sport called Jedine, and it's been codified into lore to be an actual thing that happened on Argus, obviously they're doing something right.
They did the same thing with the dwarves, actually, if I may point out, with some of their stuff in Ironforge. So,
Yeah,
like
they took an
the Cask and Anvil.
Yeah,
Yeah, Cask and Anvil exists, as does the Craft Festival. So the Craft Festival and the Cask and Anvil are actually in canon events now.
Oh no shit!
is
That
interesting.
festival is.
I believe so, yeah. You'll have to ask Ben.
Well, then also the Great Nomergon Race was also created as a
Well,
micro holiday. So
Yeah, that was an event that was started on their server for Cancer Run, so...
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Blizzard definitely has their finger on the pulse of at least the Lions side, the RPG community.
I don't know about Horde. There's no official soup night, unfortunately.
That'd be dope
What?
as hell.
No story
Or
circle yet.
Forsaken Gathering.
Isn't that Hollow's End?
Yeah, Hollow's End.
Well, we created
Yeah.
a different one. But anyway, Jedin has been sort of like it was basically headcanon up until 7.3 came out, and NPCs and Jedin practitioners were seen on Argus as ghosts or spirits. What was the reaction of the Draenei community when Jedin had become official?
Definitely favorable. We've been having Jadine tournaments. Even in fact, I think there's our own Shator Jadine tournament on the 21st. I think that's next week.
Oh, I actually might want
we
to
have
enter
ours
that.
once a month. But yeah, it's been extremely positive and excitement, especially around the person who created Jadine, whose name I believe at least I know them as Isaiah on Tumblr. I think their main in the game is Alcranon.
I know them. Yep, I played with them on Lightning Hoof. It's just I don't know if anyone knows her by this name, but I remember when she played a troll warrior named Mize too.
Yeah, so a lot of her friends, and of course, I imagine she herself are thrilled and honored by it, and we as a community have only benefited from it. And of course, we have a little bit of Draenei community whenever we go to Argus.
That's pretty dope. So I hope Blizzard's listening I hope they'll pay even more attention to community-driven events like that, because the capacity for players to sort of fill in their own lore in the absence of any actual provided lore, I think is an untapped resource. But obviously they need to gatekeep a little bit. Not every idea is good. That's the sort of the unfortunate reality of it. But Jedin apparently crossed off enough checkboxes to decide to, give you guys that nod. I'm very excited about that, and it makes me very optimistic as somebody who creates community events. That's really dope.
Oh, Kesdarel, if I may interject real quick. We were just talking about earlier how I didn't know you were actually part of the Chateau, and I've actually met you guys on Argus on my orc.
Oh,
Yeah, it was outside the Zenadar, and it was it was. I just ran into you guys, and I think I started off as guard duty for a bit, just keeping mobs off you guys.
oh yeah, we definitely appreciate that. We've been using the Zenadar as our makeshift base on Argus.
Yeah, I met some of you guys there, which I thought was kind of cool, because no one ever talks about how that's just there now.
Yeah, it's really difficult because everything on Argus wants to kill you. So going out there in force has been challenging, but
Well,
we are dedicated to our storyline, and we're gonna do it.
There you go. Funny little detour there. During one of the Forward Lines events, Kaisdarel, we had a fight against some demons, a corrupted High Mountain Tauren in the Barrens. who opened portals to Argus way before Argus was confirmed to be someplace we were even going. And when a portal opened up, Esna rolled to charge through the portal and ended up being off-worlded into Argus months in advance. So we have this sort of meme in our own guild of the Argus, of the off-world adventures of Esna, and so this is now a brand new chapter of that when he was when he was playing guard duty to the Chateau.
And it comes full circle.
I actually turned into a tiny little orc and danced between someone's leg, I think, at some point. I don't think that's actually canon, but that did happen. I thought it was pretty fun.
Believe it. We always enjoy it when we run into people in Argus, especially Horde members or other Alliance members questing or doing dailies or whatever, and they keep the mobs off us. They always get a shout of honor from us.
No.
The real meat of tonight's discussion is going to be not just the Draenei, but their new Lightforged Ascended counterparts, the Lightforged Draenei. So, as we've done with the other allied races that we've discussed, the Void Elves, the Nightborn, and the High Mountain Tauren, we're trying to figure out who they are. And Blizzard is we've experienced them through quests and through world quests and just through the narrative of Legion. But at the end of the day, what is the impression that they've left with us as far as who they are and how we separate them from the regular Draenei? So, Kazriel, if you don't mind guiding us to that, what is it about the Lightforged, other than being Lightforged, that sets the Lightforged Draenei apart from the Draenei? Who are they in comparison?
Well, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away,
Dope.
there were a race of incredibly powerful magical beings called the Eridar. And then Sargeras came and made them into demons, or at least wanted to. And a faction of them said, nope, not for me, and left. So of those that left, they were split into kind of two makeshift groups. I don't know if they were completely even, but we had Veluan's followers. He took the civilians and went with three Naru called, now let's see if I can remember which ones, Kara, Kure, and Dore.
There you go, I think that's right.
Yeah, and they left to fulfill some prophecy about. They left halfway to fulfill some prophecy about finding help to bolster the Draenei for their cause, and the other reason was to protect their culture. The other half, who didn't feel right about leaving Argus to the Legion and felt a little hurt about the betrayal from their own people, joined Zera and became the Army of the Light. And that's where we have the more militant, more aggressive Draenei. And then so for time is tricky in the Twisted Nether, so we're not quite sure, but by our reckoning, 26,000 years, give or take 1,000 years of war. They've been kind of playing a cat and mouse game with the Legion, keeping them busy and occupied until we arrived on Argus. And that's kind of that's our introduction with Lightforged, and that's basically who they are.
It's kind of funny that as we get to Argus, it seems as if the Draenei are at the losing end of the fight, and that they're maybe just moments away from utter defeat by the time that we get to them. Oh
yeah, we were losing. The Lightforged were losing. Zera, as a last-ditch effort to get the quote-unquote chosen one, sent her core to Azeroth, and basically Turalyon and Captain Freya and Ilaria were basically in hiding until we got there, because at this point they were just losing. The Legion had beat them back. They launched an assault on Argus and lost.
So they were on Argus even beforehand, right? I remember reading about that in what is it, 1,000 Years of War?
Yeah, it was during the 1,000 Years of War that we learned that they found Argus with Ilaria and Turalyon's help. And so they weren't on there. It's not like they never left Argus. They left and then came back, and they were not sieging Argus for long. I want to say it was only for the duration of, to give a player perspective of time, probably like around the start of Legion, maybe as early as Warlords of Draenor.
Okay.
Because they were keeping the Legion's forces stretched thin, so its full force wouldn't slam into Azeroth.
Okay, so they were kind of helping stem the tide, and we didn't even realize it. So the Light Force Draenei played. Oh man, if the Broken Shore was as bad as it was for us, imagine how much worse it could have been without the Light Force Draenei working in the background. Goodness gracious.
The Legion had two problems with invading Azeroth. One was a road. They didn't have a portal big enough until Tomb of Sargeras to get their forces to Azeroth because the distance between Argus and Azeroth was just too great. It would take too much time. And then the second problem was that they were fighting a war on two fronts. They were being harried by the army of the light, so they couldn't focus on one or the other.
Gotcha. And Esna was asking, what about Draenor? And I think the answer to that question is, well, Draenor doesn't have the world sword, the world's soul that the Legion has been coveting so greatly. So I don't think they were ever fully focusing their attentions on Draenor to begin with, and I think that's why the assault on Azeroth necessitated the Stymied forces, thanks to the Light Force Draenei.
Yeah, and you definitely have to remember that Draenor was a personal vendetta against the Draenei.
Right, that's what I thought.
It's also the Legion wants to remake the entire universe, but they focused on Draenor because that's where the Draenei went to.
Mm-hmm. That's also true. Now, Zera is also a big motivating factor to the Light Force Draenei, and even though they're not really the focus of our discussion, so is Illyria Windrunner and Turalyon as the High Exarch, Grand Exarch, whatever. It's stupid. I don't like Turalyon. That said, yeah, High Exarch, which is funny. Light Force Draenei, the relationship between High Exarch, Turalyon, and the Light Force Draenei seems to be a very interesting one, because on one token he appears to lead them, at the other token he appears to just be sort of the field commander, because, well, they're all part of the Grand Army of the Light. But now that we know that they are just a group of let's recap what we know so far. They're the militant half of the. I know it's not exactly half, but for the sake of explanation, they're the militant portion of the Draenei that fled from Argus, who committed to an eons-long war in order to allow the other Draenei to protect their culture as they settled on another world and eventually onto Draenor. And they've been fighting for about 26,000 years, give or take a couple thousand after that. So the Light Force Draenei have been operating under the singular purpose of fighting the Legion and keeping them at bay. What do you think it's going to be like for them to integrate back with their Draenei brothers and sisters? Do you think they'll even remember what it's like to be with them? Do you think maybe they'll struggle to sort of reacclimate to that culture?
Oh, I imagine it'll be extremely difficult. I draw the parallels when our own military personnel returned from war, like the Vietnam War. Even though they came back to America, to a hostile America with all the protests going on, and the Light Force are being welcomed into the alliance, I imagine there's a similar parallel of what now. When you create a Light Force, when you roll one for the first time, Faria says we can step onto ground that actually has grass.
I remember that being a very big deal.
Yeah, can you imagine not seeing air or water or grass or dirt for...
I can barely imagine fighting a demon army for that long and then it being expected to flip that switch off. Once you're
Consider as well...
Yeah, go ahead.
Consider as well, 26,000 years, Draenei, Light Forged or not, is a really fucking long time. Like, longer than we can even possibly comprehend. And think about how many were born under those circumstances who have never seen grass.
I'm sure
who have never known what it's not like not to fight.
I'm sure there are Draenei who are born who don't remember the Light Force Draenei, and Light Force Draenei who are born who don't remember their other Draenei. I can imagine there'd be a lot of cultural schisms there. Like, you have one group who just can't turn it off, and they have one group who doesn't seem to be fighting as hard. I mean, those are the civilian Draenei who apparently didn't think it was worthwhile to fight anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see parallels in their titles. Like when you talk about the Vindicators or their guards, their guards are called peacekeepers. some of their warriors are called defenders. So the Draenei definitely have a more reactive or passive
They sound
approach
more like
to
police
warfare.
officers.
Yeah, so they're more protection than they are aggression.
That makes sense. Actually, the hand of what are they called?
Argus.
The Hand of Argus are actually described as being more of a police force because the Draenei don't even really consider them to be selves your traditional paladins. They call themselves Exarchs and Vindicators, but there isn't really much indication that the Draenei ever call themselves paladins. So even though the Hand of Argus is seen as an analog to the Silver Hand, they're not necessarily the same.
Well, you know, I mean, like, paladins differ between each, like, culture. I'm pretty sure the
That's
Zandalore Prelates are very different from, like,
I
say,
think they should just go ahead and
Paladin.
change
Sunwalker.
they might as well just change the name Paladin to Paragon because that's the only way you can really make it fit between all the different cultures at this point. But so there's definitely room for cultural schism between the Draenei and the Lightforged Draenei, who spent so long fighting the Legion, and in a more militant sense, and then in a more protective sense. But the main difference between them seems to be the whole light forging thing. So what exactly is light forging, and how does it change the Draenei who undergoes the trial?
Well, life forging is basically what the name implies, being reforged by the light. It's being imbued with light's energy, and that manifests itself physically with your not only your abilities, enhancing your abilities, but also with your physical appearance. And it's a ritual. It's several trials to prove yourself that you are worthy of it, and then a ritual to make the transition.
Mm-hmm. And not having played through the scenario myself, but following the scenario, I can't help but associate. I can't help but think of these guys as to be kind of Super Saiyans in a way. You know, you have because of the golden aesthetic and the fact that it seems to be an ascended form of some kind.
White hair, glowing in white energy.
If I can
Something like
interject,
that. Go ahead.
just as like a sort of counter perspective, I kind of see them more as, for anyone who's played Halo, Spartan 3s, volunteers who basically gave their entire life to be augmented for battle.
That makes sense too.
Or like the
Sigmarines?
I was gonna say Space Marines, man.
Space Marines, yeah, they're basically Space
the
Marines.
Templars of the Proton.
I mean, they kind of are.
So they have a singular purpose. They're not civilians. They're fighters. They're warriors. They're going to war. They've been fighting this war for 26,000 years or more, and they've recreated themselves in the light in order to make themselves that perfect extension of the light. Do you think that's fair to say?
So they're basically demon
exactly.
hunters.
There's good.
They are the answer to the demon.
Well,
It's
yeah.
almost the same, yeah.
And at the same time, you have to ask, well, the Demon Hunters have to give up a lot too. What do the Lightforged Draenei have to give up? You said they go through all these trials to prove themselves worthy, but what comes with being proven worthy? How do you prove yourself worthy?
That's a tricky question. You obviously have to have faith in the light. There are no secular Lightforged Draenei.
That's an interesting point.
There's just complete trust and faith in the light. Anything less will see you fail.
Mhm.
It's a strange question when you ask what would you give up to be Lightforged? A lot of people will look at them and say, well, my individuality,
Mhm.
because the Lightforged definitely have a very strong unity with the light. Almost to, I wouldn't say they lose themselves, but they definitely become different.
I mean, that's kind of necessary for any big military type structure. Is you can't be focused on a one goal as a bunch of individuals. I mean, every big military, they're all uniform in that sense.
Yeah, and you'll definitely see instances like with Captain Faria, or I think it's Grand Lector Inara, where strong personalities come out with what they're doing,
Right.
but they don't diverge from what their collective goal is.
It seems very similar to like in Mass Effect 2. There's a race called the Collectors, and they are guided by a singular force, kind of like the Lightforged war with Zera, called the Harbinger, this Reaper. and they had a very singular purpose to collect genetic material and reduce it down. Now, you eventually get some of their weapons and some of their armor, and one of the scientists aboard your ship, Morden Solus, studies it and realizes that these weapons are not ergonomic. Their armor barely protects them. In their dwellings on their ship, they have no semblance of culture. They're so committed to their one true cause because they're basically puppets that there isn't really room for anything else. There's no room for personality. There's no room for personal goals or motives, no pursuit of happiness. There is only the task given by the master, and that's it for them. Do you think the Lightforge could be a parallel to that at all?
I think they have the propensity for it. I think if they allow themselves to get too zealous or too lost in their cause, I think that's possible. But I do think that they do retain a degree of agency within the light to allow themselves to keep from going that far.
Do you think a Lightforge Draenei can retire and no longer fight and maybe settle down, make a family?
Nope.
Not at all. All right.
I think there's a possibility, but I don't think it's I think it's plausible. I know. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's plausible. When you're a soldier for that long, it's hard to quit the game. In the sense, the battle for Azeroth, the war between the Horde and Alliance, is kind of a godsend for them because, for at least for the near future, they don't have to answer that question yet.
Well, they still have the Void to fight, so we'll see how long that lasts.
I'm sure they form bonds within other Lightforged. I mean, who else would you form bonds with? But it'd be interesting.
I mean, you're stuck on a ship for 26,000 years. I'm sure hands have wandered.
Oh boy!
That's a great way to
saucy.
put it. You had something you wanted to add to the hat?
Well, with the collector, I'm gonna draw this back to the Spartan thing, where you have these kids who, voluntarily or not, depending on which version of Spartans, from the age of 6 years old, have been nothing but soldiers, have been absolutely nothing but training, fighting, augmenting their bodies, going through physical pain to become this thing. The Lightforged, I don't think, are as hive mind like as the collectors or Zerg, but you have to consider that they probably just are their culture. They don't really have much in the way of defining features, at least not outwardly. They probably know a huge difference between each other because that's all that they've ever known, whereas one Lightforge might be the same as the other to us because, well, we are such a diverse and varied people. As far as the retirement thing goes, frankly, I agree with our friend over here that just when that's all that you know, doing something else, what do you do? They might not even have a formal education. This might be all they know.
I'm going to be the kind of person that says, I hate fun, and why would you bother? If you wanted to play a civilian Draenei, there is already the option there for you, if you wanted that particular fantasy. If you want to be the fantasy of you're a Lightforged Draenei, and you want to retire and stop being a Lightforged Draenei, then, all power to you. I got to wonder what the point is. In comparison to the Draenei and the regular Draenei, kind of going back off that point, do you think the appeal of the Lightforged Draenei threatens to kind of eclipse the appeal of the original Draenei? Now that you can be a Lightforged, once you have them unlocked, why would you be a regular Draenei?
That's a loaded question too, because it's difficult. I'll say this: it's a very easy.
Sorry, you're cutting out there.
It's not hard.
Say again?
Oh, I'm sorry. I say it's easy. It's not a difficult question if you want to be a shaman, death knight, or a monk.
Oh, that's true.
When you want to, if you're like a hunter, like a Rengari, or a warrior, or a priest, I can see where the question becomes a little bit more difficult because it's just they exist on both sides, so you're not really sure where to go. But it completely overclips the Draenei Paladins.
You think so?
If you are a Draenei Paladin, you are a champion of the light. You're a vindicator. Why would you not also be Lightforged?
I guess it depends on what kind of flaws you want your character to have. If you have to be flawed.
Well, I mean, we have Uriel, and she's pretty boss. I don't think you can replace her completely.
No, I don't think so. And we also have Murad. Murad is a very noteworthy paladin of the Draenei, or Vindicator. Would he have been Lightforged? Would Uriel have been Lightforged? And would that be would that enhance their character? Or would we lose something about their characters that we know about them now?
If I
I
may
think
just
it depends what kind of background you want for them.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Esma.
we're talking about how they're we're talking about like lots of kind of a sense of identity. So my dog just came in. What is it? We're talking about like the whole like loss of identity and like the greater good and like sacrifice. And you know, I think that sacrifice for the Lightforged versus the Draenei are they're two very different things, I think. And that's why I don't necessarily. I know I'm probably gonna get flack for this, but I don't actually consider the Lightforged Draenei to be Draenei. I consider them to be Lightforged Eredar. That's just a personal preference, but it's the way they act and the way they've just what they've done and how they are and what I've seen from the Eredar at least. I love Draenei. I have a shaman. I've been playing him since all the way since Wrath when I first started. And I've always kind of considered the Draenei to be a little more like we were talking about zealotry and getting lost in that. I consider the Draenei to be the opposite of that. They're humbled because they've lost a lot. They're survivors, and they're I guess they're kind of like a good example of what happens to the difference between faith and just blindly following somebody. I think the Draenei have, Legion's definitely shown that a lot, haven't they? How you kind of have to differentiate, make a difference.
Papa Hazi would tell you that, you want to play an Eredar? Well, they're called Draenei.
I know, but it's just a namesake. I feel like Draenei is a namesake.
Papa Hazi could suck my fat.
Draenei is definitely a title.
Yeah.
It means the exiles, so they're technically racially all Eredar.
Yeah, they're all Eredar, but that's what I mean. I feel like Draenei is more fitting for the Draenei cast that we know versus the Lightforged, who at this point have been so separate from the Draenei culture and have been doing their
saying
thing.
Lightforged Draenei is kind of a misnomer.
Yeah, it's kind of that's what I think anyways. It's just more of a perspective thing that I've kind of picked up on. And you'll never hear me call them as Lightforged Draenei. They will always be Lightforged.
I don't think you're totally off base. I think of them more as Draenei because they were all called Draenei, and then some of those Draenei became Lightforged. So just through the sequence of events, they are Lightforged Draenei. But I could certainly see your point.
By the way, the Lightforged process. We saw what Zero was trying to do with Illidan, but is there any possibility of that being done to the Broken and reversing the effects, or no? What do you think?
That's a good question.
I mean, I guess you wouldn't know unless you've seen it.
That's what I originally thought the Lightforged were. I thought they were just broken that had been quote unquote fixed.
Well, see, here's the thing. Anything in the light is possible. We do have a redeemed Nathrazine.
Yeah, I saw that guy.
Lothraxian.
Yeah.
So it's
and there is
you can't say that it's not possible, but we just don't see it done. Oh, sorry, go on.
Would that fundamentally change them back into Draenei or Eredar, though? I wonder if they would just be Lightforged Broken at that point.
Lightforged Crocole is the name they prefer.
I mean, you're describing a wet dream I have, but I would love to play my character as a Crocole point blank. But if he could be a light using Crocole, because that's their niche, they can't use a light. But if you found a way around that and they were able to, that's my jam.
We're talking about the Crocole and the Draenei and the Eredar by extension. And I can't help but think of the Protoss, of course, and the similarities between the two.
I was going to make
a
comparison.
Yeah, I consider the Crocole to almost kind of be like the Nerazim, as they call themselves now, the Dark Templars, and the normal Protoss, which are just more or less like the Draenei. But I always thought that was a really cool even though people are like, oh, it's just copying StarCraft, it's like, yeah, and that's a really cool idea. I always thought that was really cool.
It also kind of isn't. The Protoss had the Kala, which is the light, but that is fundamentally different from the light.
Oh no, that's like a whole like mind hive thing essentially.
The Kala was a fucking giant supercomputer crystal that melded everyone's minds together. The light is a thing that does things.
Well, the Kala gets destroyed by StarCraft Legacy of the Void. Oh, spoilers.
Fucking dumb.
Now, another thing that I think is important to note is the difference between the Draenei and the Lightforged. This isn't just a cultural difference, but because the Draenei do have shamanism, and it does not appear that the Lightforged do. We know what their classes are. They don't have shamanism. I think it's going to be sort of the similar scenario that the Tauren, the High Mountain Tauren have. People have been asking, well, what makes the Tauren from Kalimdor different from the Tauren from High Mountain? Well, the Tauren from Kalimdor, antlers, yeah. But the Tauren from Kalimdor developed this new ideology of the Sunwalkers and the Seers that the High Mountain never really needed a reason to. Well, that's what the Seers are. The High Mountain never really needed that reason. So the Draenei still have the Shaman as their domain that really separates the difference between them and the Lightforged Draenei, I think. Anywho, let's go right ahead and talk about the kind of characters that we've met through the Lightforged Draenei and the kind of people that we've had a chance to interact with. Now, for obvious reasons, I don't really want to include Turalyon or Thraxian because I don't really think that when you think of the Lightforged Draenei that they're meant to be the ones that you focus on. The person that I consider to be the leader of the Draenei, of the Lightforged Draenei in particular, and you can push back against me if you disagree, is Captain Faria. I think she's.
You think so?
I definitely think so. I think she is much more deserving of the recognition of leader of the Lightforged Draenei. But I don't play the Lightforged Draenei. I don't have a dog on that hunt. Kazura, what do you think of that?
I would have to agree. I think it was said earlier, but I'll repeat it. Turalyon seems like a figurehead and maybe a representative to the Alliance. And Faria just feels like their leader. When we go through the Lightforged acquisition quest line, we're dealing. Yeah, Turalyon brings us to the Vindicar, but we're dealing with Faria and Tepartos.
Right.
And when we make a new Lightforged, we deal solely with Captain Faria. So she just feels like the leader. When we're questing in Argus, we're dealing with Faria.
And if you consider who we meet and who introduces us to these allied races, Lady Liadrin leads us to the Nightborn, who are led by First Arcanist Thalyssra. Bane Bloodhoof leads us to recruit the High Mountain Tauren, who are led by Mela High Mountain. I think the only real exception is that Illyria Windrunner introduces us to the Void Elves, and whether or not you want to consider Magister Umbric to be the leader of the Void Elves over her is another thing, but I definitely consider, personally, Faria to be the leader of the Lightforged Draenei, and that's part of that is because I'm not really a fan of a racial leader being a race other than that group, and Turalyon particularly smacks of that really heavy mighty whitey trope that I'm not a huge fan of. The outsider who comes in and is better than everybody at the job and can do something different.
He does come across, and I like Turalyon. I do. I like him more now that I've interacted with him on Argus as opposed to this distant lore figure in Azeroth's past.
Yeah. Point.
But he does come across a little bit as a Draenei weeboo.
He's a giant Boy Scout. He's a giant Boy Scout. Oh my god.
I couldn't stand that. He has also got the hot fantasy elf wife, and so there are too many tropes on Turalyon that I'm not a fan of. So I want Faria to be the figurehead, and I hope she gets more attention as the figurehead of the leader of the Lightforged Draenei, because there's so much more involved with her.
Spear.
Yeah, she looks dope. She's got that same spear that Velen's Chosen have, it looks like.
Yeah.
I want to just talk about the whole, what would you call them, the Lightforged Elite or something like that? You know, that circle of Draenei that you meet on Argus that are kind of like just paragons of their kind of respective disciplines.
Yeah.
I feel like those guys they should be more focused as the leader of the group. That'd be kind of cool if we had a group of people that are like leader.
Now,
So
Korea's certainly not the only named Draenei that we've had experiences with and have left an impression with us. She's got a whole cadre of elite, kind of like what you were saying, Esna. They have names. This elite cadre that serve under Captain Faria. They are Grand Vindicator Sorvos, Barat the Longshot, Blade Master Telamon, I'm sorry, Grand Lector Anara, and Archmage Ymira. Now, the one who left the biggest impression with me was Blade Master Telamon, and I think that's because I think people kind of have connected the dots. He seems to be heavily influenced and inspired by Chirrut from, I don't even know if I said his name correctly, but from, Star Wars Rogue One. He even directly takes some lines from that character by saying, "The light is with me, I am with the light," or whatever it is he says.
He's basically Jedi. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we talked about this in a previous recording.
The Light Forge are Jedi, confirmed.
Yeah, and so it seems as if somebody was... Would it be fair to say then, Kaiserel, that if someone were attracted to the Jedi from Star Wars and they wanted to play WoW, then maybe the Light Forge Draenei would be the closest translation of a race that is bound to an order of codes and isn't really allowed to deviate from that path.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely a good parallel. It's definitely what attracted me as a Star Wars fan into coming into the Warcraft universe, and I think the Draenei, you can take them straight from the Warcraft franchise and throw them into the Star Wars franchise and not skip a beat at all. Yeah, I don't think because Star Wars is about this intergalactic arena of different planets and races. The Draenei have been traveling in a spaceship for thousands of years. I don't think it's a far stretch at all.
You heard it here, folks. World of Warcraft is in the same universe as Star Wars.
Oh my god. No. I was gonna actually make he's a Blade Master, right? This kind of hit me that, like, when I first saw him, like you guys were talking about first impressions, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if the Blade Masters learned from the Draenei? Wouldn't that be something?
Well, I think we determined
that would upset so many orc players.
Wouldn't that be a mind fuck?
I just thought about it. It was just the first thing I thought, like, what if the Blade Masters unintentionally taught orcs how to become Blade Masters?
Oh my god. I think it's fair to say that Blade Master Telamon is a Blade Master in name only. Not like Samuro or Ichi.
How do you? They're all Blade Masters. Hey,
I would actually shit my pants in rage.
That would be hilarious. Hey, I'm already pissy about the Talabok being native to Argus and not fucking Draenor. I was like, really, guys? Come on.
Yeah,
that's strange. I found that very strange.
I think that was just kind of lazy on their part, but whatever.
I mean, hey, we got their Ravagers on Azeroth. It's not the first time they brought species from one place to another.
Yeah. Wait, do we?
Yeah, in their starting zone.
Oh, no, yeah, in Azimuth Isle, but that's like a contained event. It's different if they're like a wild species like the Talabok are, which have been readily established as an orc. Like the orcs have been hunting them for generations, so which really makes you think how long they've been there.
Grand Lector Anara left an impression with me, too, because she is actively using the light as a weapon, and it seems angry about it. She seems
angry.
She seems vested in this righteous virtue of striking her enemies down. It's fun to watch her talk. It was a blast. I liked her a lot. Now,
my favorite line is injured. Get back in battle and come at me when you're a little bit more bleeding.
She's a tough cookie. Now, I think the Light Force Draenei character that's actually worked his way into the hearts of everybody who's played with them has been your boy Tepartos.
No.
You don't like Tepartos?
I just hate Blizzard and their memes.
Tepartos! You don't like
Blizzard and their memes.
Listen,
Jesus.
They didn't create the meme, we did. Well,
I know, but they definitely knew what they were doing when they made it.
They knew it was going to be a meme.
They knew.
They have focus groups for this. I thought Tepartos was a perfect little weebab before he was a Light Forge. He was perfect the way he was. But now he's,
I still haven't played one, so I don't know, but I don't really know and I'll say anything about him.
Tepartos is important because, you have all these people who've been Light Forged forever. Tepartos is the one character you see go through the process and what it's like to come out of the other end.
Okay, so hold on. Is he a Draenei that's becoming
that's
Light Forge, or is he...
Well, in the quest line, he's definitely a Draenei, and then he becomes like that image. I don't know if you'll have this up during the video, but
Yeah, he
becomes Lightforged. When he becomes Lightforged, he looks like that. He changes into that. However, there's no source on his origin if he is part of the Army of the Light who just hasn't been Lightforged yet, or if he's a Draenei from Azeroth who joined and then became Lightforged.
And that's a good point. That raises an interesting question. There's really nothing to suggest that Draenei currently on Azeroth wouldn't become a Lightforged Draenei, is there?
No, I think that's interesting. Yeah, that is an interesting aspect. It kind of worries him too, because I feel like during the whole during the war, eventually, which will eventually spiral out to just getting worse and worse. I feel like what kind of desperate measures are we going to resort to? And I do kind of feel like light forging is a kind of last resort.
It ought to be, because you risk losing them in the process. So
yeah,
kind of moderate. What's interesting to me though is the two current Alliance allied races are transformations of a base race into another. Either Void Elves or former Blood Elves, or High Elves who become Void infused.
well, you could argue that the High Mountain and Nightborn are just transformation of blah 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 blah.
You can argue that the High Mountain Tauren are nature forged Tauren.
True.
The Cenarian forge.
They got the touch from
Cenarian forge.
I'm pretty sure when a High Mountain Tauren is born, they are born with their antlers. They can't go through a process.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Now it is.
True enough.
Nightborn are born as You're not born as a Light Forge. You're not born as a Void Elf.
I know. It's a joke. God, dude. Jeez.
Well, I'm gonna run it into the ground. What's interesting about the characters that we showed you, Captain Freya, Grand Vindicator Sorvos, Barat the Long Shot, Blade Master Telamon, Grand Lector Anara, and Archmage Amira, is they seem to be a direct representation of the different classes that you can be as a Lightforged. So let's go ahead and talk about what they are as a playable race by talking about their class choices, if they make sense, and what their racials are. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, I think among the 4 allied races that we currently have, the 5 classes they chose for the Lightforged Draenei are the most sensible selection of classes available to them. Good job, Blizzard. I think monks would not have made sense. Warlocks definitely wouldn't have made sense. Death Knight wouldn't have made sense, and Shaman wouldn't have made sense. And here's why. We've already established the Lightforged Draenei give their all to walk this one path. So wouldn't shamanism, wouldn't the principles of being a monk and all these other forms of disciplines be flying in the face of what it is to be forged in the light? I think so.
You're also a class purist, so there's also some debate between
I am. I still think that monks should be Pandaren only. Not too late, Blizzard. You can roll it back.
Agree.
Can't have fun. There's no such thing as fun in World of Warcraft.
There's no such thing as fun in my vision of it.
If it was up to this guy, we'd all still be fucking hitting each other with sticks.
In my video game? Who the fuck do you think you are?
Right. But what do you think about the choice to not have monks and shamans for the Lightforged Draenei?
I'm curious as to why. I mean, I know why shaman, different history. The shaman, shamans were brought to the Draenei by the Broken, and the only way to get Broken is by going through the Battle of Shattrath and inhaling the red mist.
Right.
So I get why they can't be shaman. And of course, like you said, warlocks, and that does not even make sense.
Yeah.
Death Knights, I understand, because Blizzard's stance is the Death Knights were the 3rd generation that Arthas raised from Northrend, so I get why they can't do that.
Thank God that they stopped that shit, because that would have gotten crazy if they decided to have Nightborn Death Knights. So they're like, oh, come on.
I would have been upset, yeah.
Although there's rumors that Dark Irons can be Death Knights, so I'm kind of excited for that.
That would be interesting. Maybe that's quiet them down. Well, Dark Irons were a thing. They were around.
Yeah, but why would a Dark Iron risk his neck for a bunch of assholes outside his house? He ain't. I'm going to tell you that much right now.
Anyway.
I just told you.
Yeah, they were around, but they weren't part of the Alliance until after.
It'd be interesting to see. But why do you think... what about Monk?
Monk is just... I scratch my head at Monk, because all the other allied races, even the Void Elves, could be monks. And the Horde allied races got monk trainers in their capital cities.
Right.
So I just, of all of them, Blizzard said, no, Lightforged, I just don't want to be monks.
Well, I think
I scratch my head at it.
I think it's because they're not allowed to have another path other than the light. And if you become a monk, you're taking on disciplines that could, because the Tu Shui Pandaren and the Huojin Pandaren are definitely monk-based theologies, where this whole sect of monks are basing their things off of, and maybe the values of being a monk would clash with the values of what you're supposed to do in the light. You could also say it's got something to do with you have to have one class on the Horde, one class on the Alliance that just has 5, and monks just didn't make the cut. But I think it makes perfect sense that these guys wouldn't be monks. They're Light Forge Draenei. They're satisfied. Why would they need to be monks?
I'm not
Why
really.
would they need to be mages then?
Well, because the era originated as mages.
Arcane.
I don't know if you can hear the sirens behind.
Yes.
like it.
Someone's
I'm
getting
just
killed.
making an argument as devil's advocate. If they can't be monks, if they can't be monks because they can't ward through anything but the light, then why can they be mages?
Arcane.
Because you can have like light infused spells. Like you can study the magic of the light.
Well, they still use arcane. They're Eridar.
And
through and through.
arcane magic, using arcane magic and being a mage isn't really about an ideology in the same way. You're not really supposed, like, when you're a monk, you pay reverence to the August Celestials and to the ideals of Gee,
Okay.
all that
This
stuff.
here comes your class purist thought with that. I honestly do believe that as it stands next to warriors, monks probably have the most open-ended design and kind of background than as warriors do.
Mhm.
They can kind of come from any walks of life. They don't necessarily. I think the reason why monks can kind of be like the everyday man, that is quite fitting to who they are, can be the everyday man that's training himself to become an actual living weapon. They don't necessarily. I think it's more like them channeling through these techniques and not just them just worshiping the Argus Celestials like like the
That's
Pandaren
fair.
do.
But I think a part of that has to come from divorcing yourself from your own society in order to be a monk in full, because you're adopting a lot of Pandaren ideals. And I
Yeah,
just
the
don't
same
think
argument
that-
you're making for the Lightforge, though, could be applied to the Void Elves because they need to focus quite intensely on not being consumed by the
Well,
Void.
the
so-
Void also they made the whole big deal of this point with the light and the shadow, where the light will shun all other paths but one, but the Void is open to all other paths and thinks that they're all valid. So it makes more sense that a Void Elf could become a monk, because there's really nothing saying that they couldn't be.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I just realized I was muted for this entire thing.
Oh my god, I'm sorry.
Oh my
What were you-
god.
What were you saying, Qualia?
I was because I think I had this conversation in the lost recording in the previous
Probably,
one
yeah.
about how I like how my headcanon version of monks is different than everyone's trained by a Pandaren and worships
Right.
the spirit
Right.
animals. And there's how many different kinds of monks are there in our world, really? Like a Tibetan monk's not going to be the same as the Roman Catholic monk, you know.
You're right. That's a fair point.
But they do focus on similar types of practice where they have their work and they don't use weapons and whatnot.
Right.
Self-reliance versus.
Okay, some of them do use weapons, but
Mhm.
it's martial in some cultures
Right.
with the
Well,
weapons, but being able to defend yourself in the monasteries and whatnot.
you're
I
correct.
could definitely see a forged version of monk that would play pretty well to the class.
hmm
Again, that's my head canon, where not every monk is trained by a fucking Pandaren,
Yeah.
which I think fits a lot better.
Right, and you're right. And I think what Kazdero said is best, though. Kazdero acknowledged that Blizzard sees their Death Knights as a particular generation, a particular group of, Death Knights. To them, their class isn't just about what abilities you have. It's also very much about your origin, and it's very clear that Blizzard thinks that the Pandaren monks, or that style of monk, is the monk that you're rolling. So whatever everyone's free to have their own headcanon, and I don't think there's one headcanon that's more important than
And I
the other.
think the panda thing is just to plug and play
Yeah.
for the mass majority. I don't think they expect everyone to be like, no, this is the type of monk you have to be, because
They're not like
you
you
have
do.
to be trained
Yeah.
by a fucking
Well, if
panda.
Jeff
Even
Kaplan,
if it is hinted at for easiness,
well,
for simplicity's sake, you don't need it, because we don't have unique class quests for every single race. Like
you're right.
they used to have a little bit once in a while. If they did, yeah, I'm sure there'd be
hmm
really interesting for culture
They
where
would
they
be.
had their own unique ability that customized.
Oh man,
At least
you're
at this point in the game.
You're turning to robot caller.
a little bit, yeah. But I
Okay.
got most of what you said.
You got just of it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Claudia, go recharge yourself. You're dying on us.
If Jeff Kaplan, who is currently the Overwatch director, used to be on World of Warcraft, and so I'm going to espouse a little bit of a philosophy he said when players have asked him about certain couplings and ships and pairings and what basically their interpretations of how the characters behave. Jeff Kaplan is perfectly fine allowing players to adopt parts of the game and the world for themselves and their interpretation. And having been on the World of Warcraft team, I'm sure that's a philosophy that it exists somewhere in there. I'm sure
Jeff Kaplan's a huge nerd.
Jeff Kaplan is a huge nerd, but we love Jeff. He's the greatest Overwatch hero. But the point I'm making is that
He's my hero.
Blizzard might define for themselves what these classes are and what their origins are, but they have no problem with you allowing you to insert your own idea in there. Even if
it's kind of like playing any RPG game. Not every warrior is going to have the same backstory as every other warrior, And
Right.
it's the idea of playing a role-playing game. You're taking on this role, and not everyone's going to be the same.
True. I'm just saying that sometimes that role does include an origin, and it's clear what Blizzard wants the monk class to be.
But I think the origin is more just like, yeah, this is what the standard is, and I think it's fair to deviate with that, at least with headcanon and how you would tell your story.
Right. We're kind of getting in the weeds here. But again, the only thing I'm saying is Blizzard does have an identity attached to these classes, but they're not going to hold you to it.
I feel like our monk version of this podcast is going to be really interesting when we get to it eventually.
I can't wait. That and the paladin and the priest and the warlock and the mage, they're all going to be interesting. Everyone can watch every single thing that we do.
I can go over each class and monk and how their story could fit. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Now,
or every race, I mean.
There's a very interesting class race spec combination with the Lightforged. John, I want your take on this, Kazriel, because you said they have to have faith in the light. They cannot deviate. They cannot doubt. Is there any such thing as a Shadow Priest Lightforged Draenei?
Well.
Honestly, I don't think so. I really don't think so.
I'm going to hit that no button. Nope. It's a non-canon combination. It exists for game mechanics, because obviously they're not going to say this spec on this class is not available to this race.
Same argument we can make for Void Elves again and fucking Blood Elves in the Silver Moon. Oh, you got Void Elves over here and Warlocks, but
I've made the same argument for I've made the same argument for the light spec priests of the Void Elves, and I also made the same argument for I make the same argument for the Tauren also. I don't think Tauren Shadow Priests technically exist unless they're an old god cultist, but not within society. Anyway, is it possible for a Lightforged Draenei to take up the Shadow, and if they do, are they no longer Lightforged? What happens to a Lightforged who doubts? Can they doubt? Are they even capable of it?
Do you want my honest answer?
Yes.
I don't think they're even capable of it.
Oh wow!
I think they go through so much rigorous trials before to weed out any doubt beforehand, and then the ritual itself, you have to conquer your doubts. It's part of the package of emotions. You have to conquer your aggression. You have to conquer your fears. You have to conquer your doubts and release them. I don't think any current Lightforged experiences at least true doubt where they would walk away from being Lightforged.
I could imagine a scenario down the line where after someone's been Lightforged for a while and then just becoming disillusioned with the light in a way, and then in that way growing down just becoming jaded after a long time or something.
I definitely think it would have to be a prominent light user, or maybe a manifestation of the light itself, who did something so bad that it would disgust the Lightforge, who did something totally against the light, or totally against every principle that the army of the light has, to really get someone to turn away from it.
I think I think it's gonna be one of those questions where we don't have a definitive answer until the time Blizzard decides to make it a definitive answer. It's gonna be open speculation until that time Blizzard decides, for whatever reason, to show us a Lightforged who loses his faith, and what the consequences of that is. Maybe they are unmade. Maybe they just lose the power. Maybe they go void form. There's a theory out there that there is such that if now that they are imbued with the light, that they can transition.
Kind of like the Naru.
Shadow.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just about to say it's
That's
actually
scary.
because the Naru transition between light and void.
Yeah. Maybe the Light Force Draenei. We'll talk a little bit more about
Force
that.
also mimic that.
Maybe. I want to talk a little bit more about that later because let's get into their racials real quick just so we can say that we've done so. The racials are Forge of Light, Holy Resistance, Light Judgment, Light Reckoning, and Demon Bane. All pretty sensible, I'd say. I know people have something to say about the Forge of Light. How do you like them?
Yes, unless you're a blacksmith or have a bunch of friendly blacksmith friends, it's kind of useless.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense. Why would I just... Okay, light forging, haha, I'm a blacksmith. I forge with the light. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's in the name, Light Forge, Forge of Light. I get it. I see what they did.
Well, if I may interject, as far as lore goes, you would imagine that these guys would have to be pretty fucking handy with the supplies that they have because they probably don't have much of it.
Yeah.
They probably are pretty. They can't just pick up a fucking fell sword and use it. They probably have to be able to sharpen, repair, and take care of their weapons out on the field, even if they aren't like blacksmith by
They
trade.
did build the warframes.
That's a fair point. So obviously they're capable of some sort of construct generation. I just realized all the Light Force Draenei are in some small capacity, basically a Green Lantern where they can create constructs.
Oh, idea.
Fuck me.
Did the Lightforge get the ability to go Aloha Snack Bar still, or do they remove that?
Yeah, they do.
Oh my god,
I
that
think
is amazing.
Coolest.
They
That's
have they erupt upon death, dealing holy damage to nearby enemies and healing upon nearby allies. Now the question is,
Oh yes, that. Let me tell you.
yeah, okay,
I'm sorry, my sound is cutting off.
gotcha. Okay, let me just before you go into it, I play an undead warrior. Let's say I'm in a battleground, I kill a Light Force Draenei, and I'm at about half health. Am I really in peril if I don't get out of Light's Reckoning?
Maybe.
How much do I stand to lose if I don't get out of that in time?
I'm not 100% sure because I haven't done that specifically. I haven't entered PvP with my Lightforge.
I think he means lore-wise.
I just
But-
keep for some PvP
No,
right now,
I
so
do
I'm
mean
ready for it.
I do mean mechanics wise. I want to see if it's actually a significant racial and if it's
It's a
any
pretty
good.
big chunk of
But I do know that I have accidentally, of course, because why would anyone do this on purpose, overpulled when questing or even in the dungeon, and of course gotten my ass handed to me.
Yeah.
But managed to still complete the quest objective because when I exploded, I killed everyone around me.
Oh wow.
That is so satisfying.
Here's the
It
thing: is
does
that,
do
like,
a huge
super
chunk.
crazy effective or not, it's fucking cool. Like no one can deny that it's fucking cool.
That
Yeah.
and their active ability where you Light's Judgment, I think it's called.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool too. It has a beautiful visual and I think a little bit of a sound effect, or maybe I'm just making that sound effect in my head.
Well, let's
I
see.
haven't quite figured it out yet.
I wanna
I'm
see
just
if I can
imagining
find
you in your
the-
head going.
Yeah, it sounds like a proton beam.
I'm gonna see if we can find a quick video of the racials, and I'm not gonna put this. Okay, here we go. Light Forge racial ability.
My only gripe about both of those racials is it scales to level. So it's super powerful when you're a lower level, but kind of insignificant at the higher levels.
What's going on with this video? Here we go. Yep. Okay. So that's Light's Judgment. Pretty dope.
Yeah, I'm liking Light Judgments leveling around.
That's cool.
Oh wow.
I just walk up to something, and by the time I get up to it, it blows up in my face.
I wish it had a health bar showing. I'd like to know how much of that health bar was taken away by that spell.
All of it, you just saw him die.
Was that full health though? Oh wow. Okay. One of them got killed.
Well, this looks like a level maybe it could be level 20 Lightforged, and with
Isn't it
level
like this kills
scaling,
all the
those guys are
normal
level
mobs?
20.
Yeah.
Because Elwyn Forest levels with, does it go to
You know.
10 or does it go to
Just
16?
10. No, just 10, I believe.
That's a good point. With level scaling, he's either under leveled or at level.
That's a good point. So obviously it's significant numbers enough to make it worthwhile, even though I've heard some people say that they're displeased to have an entire racial that doesn't take effect until you die. It's kind of the same as the Night Elf racial, where you get to. I mean, it's kind of useful though. You get to your body faster, but other than that, what good does it really do?
I
I
think
thought it was kind of cool being a wisp.
I don't
honestly.
want to fucking hear it after having the same shit racial for the entire fucking game.
No.
Oh, you don't like blood? You don't like Blood Rage?
I mean, it's cool for the lore reasons, but who gives a shit? It's
It's another
not
cooldown you
interesting
can
to
pop with your
use.
trinkets.
So,
Boom, boom. I
is
like
that
getting
exciting to do?
Well, actually, to be fair, Gorm, in PvP, it's extremely useful. I will disagree with you on that one. Blood Rage is extremely useful if you need to just slam through somebody with like a huge burst of damage. You pop that with a fucking battle flask and a fucking, what was it? I think it's the flask that gives you like 1,000 attack damage or something like that. You pop that with that, plus the battle rage and a trinket, plus the artifact ability with the strength. You can hit pretty fucking hard pretty quick.
I don't know. I've
As
never
a
found
warrior.
much use for it.
As a warrior, it's extremely useful. I don't know about mages, but you know.
I will say that the Troll Berserker racial is really fun too. Anyway,
Oh my god, that is so fun as a caster.
fun as an enhancement shaman. I move so fast. Anywho,
dude,
let's see.
dude.
So they
First
also
time
get-
with a fucking bloodlust.
Yeah, no kidding. So they also have holy resistance, so they're more resistant to holy damage. Who would have thought? And they
Makes
I
sense.
mean, that feels kind of useless because who
Silly.
uses holy damage?
Priests?
it fits the
Priest.
theme, even if it's not exactly
PvP,
utilitarian.
I guess, but like an actual
Scarlet Crusade.
for
Yeah, I,
Paladin,
hey, I do like this Demon Bane one.
I don't. I hate it, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't stack with heirlooms.
Oh, it does
Oh.
not? Oh,
No.
shit. Well, then it
And,
hits you on the
first of all, it makes leveling somewhat quicker if you were to level, like, say, an Outland or parts of Draenor
Yeah, why would you
and
not go
parts
to
of
Outland?
Legion.
if you have a 20% experience boost there.
Because it sucks.
It's okay. It's not.
But
Would you
it
rather
doesn't
have
stack with
20%
heirlooms
or
because there's a hard.
50%?
I think it's 20.
Yeah, exactly.
because-
That's my point. Is the heirlooms give you 55? I think.
Oh no, yeah, I think it
Backup.
goes 50. Well, because there's a hard cap, I believe, of 60% bonus XP, and you can get around that hard
Dumb.
cap, like with the Darkroom Fair Curse Wheel, and there was something else that gave you bonus XP. I don't remember what it was.
There was a potion back during WoW.
Oh, and the potion.
Yeah, the purple
But
potion.
if you're wearing heirlooms and you have the opportunity for that racial, it doesn't stack. It doesn't go above the threshold.
Damn. Oh, well, shit.
You know, the thing is, didn't the trolls also have kind of a weird racial between like it was like such a short-lived racial. It was called Beast Sling, I think, and trolls did like more damage and got 25 more experience for killing Beast.
Every race has their racial, which is kind of worthless, okay? I mean, how long did Undead have underwater breathing?
That was not worthless.
That's not useless.
Fuck you.
I
That
think,
was
they,
not
I think they
worthless.
still have it.
That's not useless, you
We
dork.
do still
When was
have
the last
it.
time you fucking drowned,
on
Dayon?
my level 1 newly rolled undead forsaken character.
Yeah.
I was looking for a corpse weed in the bottom of the lake, and you know that quest where in that area. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
And I had to go AFK for some reason, and it was still underwater. And I came back. I'm like, oh, I'm still alive.
Yeah,
It's because I never knew they could breathe underwater.
it used to just be a 400% increase to the breath you could hold because the lore was like you would still fall apart in water or something. Anyway,
Floated.
every race has the questionable racial, and the Light Forge John I like their racials. I think they make sense. I think the cool factor from Light's Judgment and Light's, what is it, Fury, Aloha Snack Bar, kind of make up for it.
Aloha snack bar.
I will say though, I do miss my gift
Healing?
of Naru.
Oh yeah, no,
Why
that's
they don't have that? But don't they always have that fucking emblem on their head, almost constantly?
That's a nice trade-off where you always have that sigil.
I still think get the Nar is actually pretty useful in for just like a little burst healing here and there if you need it, especially in like a PvE setting.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely saved my ass in a raid once or twice.
Yeah, it's definitely saved me too because it scales with other healing things, so it's like
Anywho, so now we're gonna go ahead and just speculate a couple things about the Light Forge John, and particularly where their future lies. And I got about 25 more minutes before I need to hit the road. So let's talk about the big question. The big question that we've been at that has been asked about the Nightborn and shut the fuck up! God damn it! Okay. The question about the Nightborn, the High Mountain Torn, and the Light Forged, as a group of people that both the Horde and the Alliance have fought beside, is why are they deciding to join one faction over the other? The High Mountain Torn were given, and we learned why the Nightborn have fallen out of favor with the Alliance in general. thinking that they are particularly stagnant, and that Thorandi just can be really mean sometimes.
Well, I think this answer is pretty simple. I'm gonna boil it down to this: booty, 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 rocking everywhere. Bane and fucking Melee are gonna be a power couple. Don't even fucking deny it.
I agree. I'm looking forward to it, but we already know people were. The first contention people made about the Lightforge siding with one faction or the other is they just fought the Burning Legion. Why would they fight a petty faction war? Well, because we already established that they may not have the ability to turn it off. They've given their whole life to be a weapon of the light, and what is a weapon without a war to fight in?
Deep questions.
A rusty piece of shit that does nothing.
Yeah, they're gonna fight because it's what they've given everything to do, and that's always sort of been the whole now what has always been a kind of a question for them. When for the Forsaken, the question of what are they gonna do after the Wrath of Lich King, after the Lich King is dead, they're not gonna have an enemy. Well, they'll make new enemies. The Lightforged Draenei are siding with the Alliance, and they're just gonna, they weren't gonna side with the Horde. Not while Turalyon and Illyria were still Alliance heroes. They have statues in Stormwind for a reason. There's no way they were going to join the Horde. No way.
It might not even be a thing of like... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, they have Turalyon, who is the Alliance poster boy. Mm-hmm. Sons of Lothar has always been in the Alliance camp. And then you have their Draenei kin. They're not going to turn against their kin. Sure. It was a no-brainer. It really wasn't.
No,
if you want to look at it from a character perspective, from a Lightforge perspective, just because they worked with the other Azerothians doesn't mean they liked working with the Horde. Like, can you honestly tell me that a Forsaken Warlock who came to Argus to fight against the Legion teamed up with the Army of the Light for anything else other than convenience? Do you think the army, a Lightforged Draenei, is going to look at a Forsaken Warlock and go, yeah, he seems like an okay guy?
Not at all. And I think the Lightforged Draenei hadn't yet quite learned what the Orcs did to their kin on Draenor. Even though we've established that maybe the time apart kind of drives a schism between them, maybe they can't identify and relate with each other as well as they did before they split, there's still that history there. And I'm sure that once they find out that the Orcs are responsible for a massive slaughter of Draenei on Draenor,
yeah, I think that's going to make any relationship run cold.
They're going to be like, man, those Orcs weren't so bad. Well, did you hear about what they did on Draenor? No, what'd they do?
It's like
what?
It's like you're dating someone new, and oh, by the way, I'm a mass murderer. What?
They're not going to give a shit if you tell them, well, the Orcs are repenting for what they've done by living in the harsh conditions of Durotar, and, they're trying to atone for being servants of the Burning Legion. They're going to be like, yeah, but they were servants of the Burning Legion from they were at one point, so fuck them.
Huh? Funny coming from a race talking about sins of the father.
Paved with journey goals.
Yeah, no.
Good luck with that argument.
I mean, obviously the Orcs. I mean, Esna, Goromatch, you guys play Orcs. Obviously, your Orcish characters, I think that's fair to say, are not the same Orcish, warlords and marauders that stormed the Temple of Karabor back in the day. But certainly, that's not exactly a history you can brush aside, is it?
No,
absolutely not.
Osmond's father fucking butchered Draenei.
Has Esna participated in killing Draenei?
No, he was born in Azeroth, you idiot.
Okay, that's right. And Goromatch was also born in Azeroth, too, right?
Yeah, we're both babies.
Gotcha. Okay.
He is 28 right now.
So, the Lightforged Draenei. The only sticking point, I kind of favored the idea of why would they care? One thing I really wanted to see with Turalyon and Illyria in particular was a sort of strain towards their son Arator, because they've been fighting for thousands of years, and it's the only thing that they've ever known. It would be kind of interesting, and I think tragic to see that after a successful campaign against the Burning Legion, the one thing that they would fail at is being a good parent to their son, because of their experiences in the Twisted Nether against the Burning Legion. So I'm actually kind of surprised that Turalyon himself has such grand ideals of the Alliance after 1,000 years away from them. I'm surprised he even remembers them that well. I thought Turalyon might have moved on, but no.
Yeah, kind of the same.
He's full-throated for the Alliance. I figured he's like, I have dealt with much bigger shit than your little petty faction war, but, at the same time...
That kind of thing makes you wonder why he's 10,000 years old. What's the point of him being that old? Who cares?
I felt like that's Gorm's right. You guys are both right. I feel like Tyrellian should have been like a figure that should have been like a neutral character essentially. Like he's not gonna get. I can't believe Khadgar of all people is the one that's calling people out. Like, hey, let's not just all kill each other just yet.
Right.
So I mean,
and one more
weird.
point before we get off this subject is that like everybody has legitimate points about like the orcs and about the Draenei being their kin, but let's just say like for the sake of one final point that none of that had happened. This is just like a planet where the Draenei were not at. The orcs had not done what they'd done. It was just a bunch of random people that they would had no interaction with. They don't lean one side or the other, but Tyrellian and Illyria are both Alliance heroes.
Right.
That alone is an in. It doesn't matter at that point when you're trying to fight people. It doesn't matter what side is a side. You have an in with one side, a side that you can kind of relate to. Mm-hmm. That's kind of all you need to survive in a world like this.
Well, Tyrion is also, quote unquote, a hero of the Alliance, but he didn't decide to go down that road, so I don't know about that.
Well, Tyrion was his whole other faction. He was the Argent Crusade.
Well, yeah, but
Tyrion.
It was also made up of both factions.
Well, remember that Tyrion also quit the Alliance when his son was killed.
That's true.
Right.
Lived life of as a hermit until he was brought back into
Which one?
by the Legion.
Wait, we're talking about his son that was killed by the Scarlet Crusade?
That's as far as I know. I have no idea. Human lore bores me.
Well, no, Tyrion had I mean, he has like two sons, I think, that both got
Right.
killed.
I don't remember.
His second one was the one killed by the Scarlet Crusade.
Anyway, first, I think for Tyrellian and Illyria, the reason I think they wouldn't care, but the reason I think the Lightforged Draenei would care is because, well, Illyria never got Lightforged, so she still kind of has the freedom to go about and do whatever she wants. Tyrellian kind of roped into being a champion of the light because he is Lightforged, just like the Draenei. But I guess if I have to say that a Lightforged. That's the thing. We established that the Lightforged Draenei probably can't settle because they're too focused on it. And then you have Tyrellian, mighty fucking Whitey. The rules apparently don't apply because now he gets to go and be dad again. Everything that's cool about the Lightforged Draenei, about their commitment and who they are and why they fight and how long they're going to fight for, doesn't seem to apply to Tyrellian as heavily because he gets to have it all. He gets to have his wife. He gets to have his kid.
He's a Mary Sue, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he's a Mary Sue. They turn him into a Mary Sue.
Or he's a Mary Stew, I guess, is more accurate.
Gary Stew.
Gary Stew, yeah, there, whatever.
Marlon
Gary
Stew. I don't know, but it makes, at the end of the day, since we're talking about the Lightforged, it makes sense that the Lightforged joined the Alliance because they needed to fight. They had kin, they had an in, and they weren't going to join forces with the Forsaken, the Orcs. And they have a reason to keep fighting. Tyrellian and Illyria, I don't know why they care about the Alliance, but the Lightforged Draenei, I think if the Draenei were in any other faction, the Lightforged Draenei would have just joined that faction. Let's say the Draenei had left the Alliance and joined the Argent Crusade to lead it in the absence of Tyrion. The Lightforged Draenei have no commitment to the Alliance and would have just joined whatever faction the other Draenei are in. You know?
Yeah, I can.
Probably. I think it's
buy
more
that.
of kin than, loyalties, but...
Yeah. They have no commitment to the Alliance. Illyria and Tyrellian, for some reason, still do. But it makes sense that they are just going to continue fighting, and that means, yes, a petty faction war.
Oh, Kizdorl, before we close this out, I wanted to ask you something personally.
Sure, go for it.
It's about the Draenei and their position in Kalimdor now that the Night Elves, their closest ally, will be removed for Battle for Azeroth. How do you think the Chateau is going to react to that?
Very aggressively.
Are you guys gonna take in refugees?
So I don't know what my leadership has planned. I stepped away from that aspect of the guild a couple months ago, so I don't know what the future plotline might hold. But I definitely know that we are going to take a very aggressive stance against the Horde.
Yeah.
Here's a suggestion.
And go ahead.
You pick up the Exodar and
Yes.
put it somewhere else.
Yes.
Well, here's what I'm only gonna say this once though. We have a ship that can shoot lasers, so maybe
Oh my God.
Sylvanas should be a little careful.
Speaking of,
We do have the Vindicar on our side.
let's briefly go into the Void Forging speculation. And I want to go into speculation about a very interesting experience Qualia had playing as an Alliance character. So we kind of touched on the Void Forging aspect before, and I got about 15 minutes, so let's make this quick. is it possible for the Lightforged Draenei to become Voidforged? Can they go through those same cycles? Are they, by being Lightforged, have they been in part with the essence of the Naru specifically, or just the raw essence of the light apart from the Naru's own physiology?
I mean, personally, I say no, but with Blizzard, the rule of cool, anything's possible.
Yeah. I
hate the
we
rule
have
of cool.
So here's the thing. First of all, is void forging a thing? We have void elves, so it kind of is.
Yeah,
we
it
just
kind of is.
I call it more mutation than fortune, but
I made this point when we first recorded this episode, this section, but the Lightforged Draenei aren't an aspect of the Draenei. Being Draenei is irrelevant. The Lightforged Draenei is a light allied race.
Huh. That's a fair point.
Just like
right.
the Void Elves aren't. Them being elves is irrelevant. They are physical manifestations of the void, and the Lightforged are physical manifestations of the light. You're playing a race that is the light. It doesn't matter because being a Draenei isn't part of their identity.
Right. I just mindfucked myself. I realized something about all 4 allied races. Each one of them represents a different force of nature.
arcane, nature, light and shadow.
Exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god.
Jungle.
About the Dark Irons.
Well, I don't think I didn't mean to imply that every
What about
single
the
ally.
Zandalari?
Hold on. I wasn't talking about the Zandalari and the Dark Iron. I think this thematic of some force of nature being added to the factions, I think it's unique to these 4. So nature, arcane, light, and shadow. I don't know what the Zandalari and Dark Iron and the Kultirans and the Orcs are going to bring, but I think for these 4 in particular, it's an interesting. For these 4, it's an interesting parallel. I think the Horde got arcane in nature. Is that because they were lacking it before? No, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I think Kaiser, you got it on the head. Rule of cool means anything can fucking happen. And rule of cool is we still have Lillian fucking Voss. What's up?
Do your legs hurt from backpedaling so much?
I'm actually standing. But no, I'm not backpedaling.
Does
Hey.
your butt hurt from removing the stick?
No. Matter of fact, that stick is very comfortable where it is. Anywho.
It's up his ass.
It's okay. It's okay. The game will continue on.
Yeah, no, I know. Hey, I'm allowed to have an epiphany on a recording every once in a while. Now, Qualia, you had an interesting experience playing as an Alliance character on the Vindicar. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did?
Yeah, you did. You said that you encountered some Lightforged role players, and they asked you what you were doing there.
Oh, right. So I was just kind of unlocking the quest for Lightforge, and some Lightforge guy comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, you're not a Lightforge. How did you get here?" I'm like, "Should I not be?" I was just confused, so I didn't realize he was in character at the time.
Well, Kazdrael, do you have any insight on that? Or the Vindicar, is it a Lightforged only dwelling?
I mean, it's definitely our racial capital, and I use racial capital in loose quotations.
It's a small ship, all things considered.
Yeah, I think some people just don't realize that the same hub of the Vindicar that the Lightforged use as a base is the same place where the quest starts. When you start the quest, the acquisition quest, it's not an instance version of the Vindicar.
Oh.
So I think people just kind of forgot that.
Does that mean Horde players can interact with Lightforged role players if they're just hanging out in the Vindicar?
No, because the Horde can't get to it.
You have the Alliance to do the quest.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this Vindicar is an Azeroth Vindicar.
Well, that'd be fucking hilarious if a Death Knight popped in and was like, "Yo, what's up?"
It's it's not the same Vindicar that's on Argus. In fact, if you look out the window, you can see Azeroth rotating.
That's awesome, actually.
Oh, it's a really cool view.
Can I? Here's
I've actually sat there and watched it turn all the way around.
So, you had something you wanted to add, Esna, or are you just gonna choke on your spit?
I was gonna make a joke about how the do you think there's gonna be a story in the future between the Lightforge and the Void Elves and how they're gonna come at conflict with each other eventually?
Yeah, what kind of allies are they going to
Oh.
be to each other?
They are definitely diametrically opposed foes.
I can just see the
If you
Light
get that reference,
And also
will-
demon
Yeah.
hunters.
Yeah, Demon Hunters.
it's definitely interesting, and I hope there is. I really, really do hope that there is. And we see in battle that we see Tharistra and Lasan Skyhorn show up in Horde quest lines.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping we get our own set.
With
We
Umbrik
we
and
see
Furia.
more of the Life Forged and more of the Void people.
I
One
gotta
of them
s-
gets a rash.
Okay, I gotta say, spoiler warning for Varrock Sarfang, for Goramash and Esna. Plug your ears
Oh,
now
I
if
already
you don't want to
know.
hear about it.
I know.
Let me know in
Let's get
chat
that
when it's
one.
done.
Okay, Varrock
Ah.
Sarfang does not want to return to the Horde. The Horde has been fraught with fractured alliances for a very, very, very long time, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. With our main guy, who doesn't even want to come back to the Horde, who knows when the Horde is going to experience any real sense of unity that I've been hoping for. Maybe that's just part of the dynamic of the Horde to be chaotic and, and just never really truly settle. Like,
I will say, he sounds more like he's retiring. He's not joining the Alliance. He's just retiring.
I don't think he's
Well,
going to join the
no,
Alliance.
it's not retiring. He's making a stance. He can't.
He's
be
going on
neutral.
strike. I don't think he's joining the Alliance,
Yeah.
though. is
No,
the
I don't
point.
think so either. But
No.
the Horde is
Goramash may
And
well
I
follow him, to be honest.
I breathe
Oh,
a
hey,
sigh
Goramash.
of relief when
Yeah,
I
I'm still
found
here.
that out.
Well, here's why I bring it up. The Horde has been so fraught with distrust between its disparate factions, and here you have a diametrically opposed force with the Light Force Draenei and the Void Elves. If the Void Elves and the Light Force Draenei can get along, what does that say about the Horde's inability to do so? And would it be unrealistic for the Light Force Draenei and the Void Elves not to experience some sort of strife between them?
They're going to tolerate each other, and much like how the orcs have tolerated each other.
You know what would be
through
interesting?
times.
What?
It would be interesting if, because as Tharistra so famously said that the Alliance was so stoic and
Stagnant, she said.
stagnant.
Yeah.
The three S's: stoic, stagnant, and static.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
interesting if this added some chaos to the Alliance power structure.
I would hope to see it. I really do.
I was
They
kinda
just need to be
hoping-
superficial,
But
like
with-
the Void
but
Elves.
with-
It's like,
yeah,
oh, they're colored
because-
blue.
Yeah, because
So
with
edgy.
Illyria and Terralion boning each other, I doubt they're going to disagree on too.
Can they actually even touch each other?
No, apparently they can't touch each other, but I wouldn't be surprised if they relaxed.
I like how that's the fucking line they draw in the sand. Is that like, no, they don't have any like differences in like opinion. They don't have any differences in like they don't have any arguments. They don't have any changes. They just can't bone. That's what separates them.
Well,
I don't know about
Divorce,
that.
divorce.
Which
Or
that's a
Muslim.
different podcast of a different flavor. But I definitely think, personally, as I interpret it, they couldn't touch at that time
Oh my
when she couldn't
God.
control her void powers and he was radiating the light. I think after some control and time to adjust, they can touch each other now.
I'm glad to know that Tyrillian is able to be intolerant to the void up to the point it happens to be in his wife.
yeah,
Glad you can really stand by your morals, Tyrillian. You're a
My
really
wife.
stand-up character. My hot elf wife is Shadow. Oh,
It just sounds like jealousy, honestly. At this point, you just sound jealous of Terralion.
it's
I
blue balls.
fucking
hell no. No.
I want
Well,
everything.
at least-
I want to
at
have
least
like
you
a
have the
cool ass
bed one.
family and have everything in my life go the way I want. I want that.
Oh, that's what we all want.
The reason I think I don't like Tyrillian is because all the cool things that about I think are the cool about the Draenei, the Light Force Draenei, they're adherents to their cause. They are not able to doubt. They're not able to stray. But then Tyrillian does all the shit they're apparently not supposed to do. He's really close to his void infused elf queen. I just because then what does that mean for the other Light Force? Can a Light Force Draenei get a void elf wife too? Is it if they're can
Everybody gets a waifu.
Yeah.
You know they're gonna try, right? This is an RP realm. It's gonna
It's
happen.
gonna happen. Watch.
Oh my god. Because the diametric nature of the light and shadow just isn't effectively told unless you're fucking them.
I fucking told you, dude. It revolves all around booty.
I-
booty, rocket everywhere.
Anyway.
Death Knights can procreate. Totally.
Oh my god, they said that too. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap it up. I got 5 minutes before I gotta hit the road. So, Kai Zarel, I want to thank you very much for joining us and helping us and adding some insight to the discussion of Lightforged Draenei, because we're a bunch of horde dudes and fanboys. We wouldn't have known half as much as what you brought to the table. Esna and Gormash, I want to thank both of you for joining us in and giving, making sure it's not just us spinning in circles. And
thanks for joining us, guys. You fucking Alliance pig.
And Qualia, shout out to you too, because you've been here at every consistent attempt at recording this, and this one I think is the one that's gonna win. So thank you for your patience with me, bud.
All right. Well, I got a backup just in case.
Perfect. Anywho, it's now that we're doing our outros. If anyone has any social media they want to plug, if you do art and you want to show it off, if you do writing and you want to show it off, if you do any kind of creative work and you want to show it off, or if you have a community event that you're doing in World of Warcraft servers that you want to show off and sort of shout out, now's a good time for it. So we'll start with our guest, Kais Durrell. Kais Durrell, what's going on in your life, bud? What would you like to share with the community?
I'm basically a writer, and I'm trying to put out my own work as well as work on my Blizzard stuff with my guild. So you can find me on Tumblr, Kaisdero. Not Kaisdero. I'm sorry. I'm Krokul. It's spelled exactly as it is in game, Krokul. And that's my personal blog, so you'll see stuff I reblog plus stuff I write and all that stuff. And then I don't know when this episode will air, but on the 21st, we had the Shatoras hosting their monthly Jadine. And if you missed this one, then we have it at the last Wednesday of every month. So
last Wednesday
we do it every month. So if you guys want to come back, if anyone wants to come by,
where are you holding this? The Jadine tournament?
We usually hold it in the Exodar Whisper, or if you can send some in-game mail to Varistus, Vivaldi, Casimia, or Clement. Any Shatora officer, you can.
You might want to send me those names in chat, because there's no way I'm going to be able to remember.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Please.
And again, once more, a shout out to the Shator Guild of the Alliance Wormrest Accord for fielding us such a magnificent member to share with our panel. The shout out in particular to my old friend Mize2, because I forget how to say your other names. I hope you hear this. We should catch up sometime. Now, Gormash, where can we find you, bud? Do you have anything you'd like to share?
YouTube, Ghost in the Eyes. I do shitty Dark Souls videos. Check it out.
I like it. Short, sweet, to the point. Esna, how about you? Where can we find your clown ass?
You can find me where the bitches are. Now, if you excuse me, I'm wearing Miss New Booty in the background.
Well, shit.
How about you, Qualia? Where can we find your debaucherous activities?
Yeah, you can follow me on Tumblr at ZombieQualia or Twitter at the same place. I do 3D model edits of things I think that are interesting that sometimes end up in lewd activities. So, not safe for work warning there.
Yeah, it's very not safe for work. We our local degenerate here.
Hey, you shut up. Don't bully.
Anywho. At the time of this recording, we have 2 episodes in the works: the multi-part series of allied races for the High Mountain Tauren, the Nightborn Elves, and now the Lightforged Draenei. We just did a Q&A session of the live developer question and answer session with Ian Hazakasas and Josh Allen that went out on the 15th of March, and we're going to be working on a new series. Our next episode, I believe, will either be on the Chronicles Volume 3, if we have a chance to sink our teeth into that, or an Allied Race episode about the Zandalari Trolls and the Darkspear Dwarves and what we know about them so far. And what we
Excuse me, what? Darkspear Dwarves?
Did I say Darkspear Dwarves?
Fucking idiot.
That was so good.
Yes.
Dark Iron Dwarves.
They haven't been
go.
confirmed yet, alright? Just speculation.
Anywho, look
Come
at
get the I can bend steel with my thighs more.
Do a Scottish Jamaican.
Well, that's the show, guys. If you liked what you heard, if you like spending time with us, subscribe to our channel, like this video.
Don't do it to trap.
Hit that bell notification and be on the lookout for any other videos that we do. We're also going to try and do some more videos of our Chopping Wood series, where individual members of this panel will expound on something they want to throw into the ether for you to enjoy or ridicule or make fun of or laugh at. It's all fair game. And with that, we're going to go ahead and put this fire out and call it a night. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a good rest of your night. Safe travels.
Give it time. Get
Get it right.